know what's really amazing about doing this project is playing 3 different characters. I'm part of 3 stories, which means beginning, middle, and end 3 times. Whereas when you're doing an opera, a full-length opera that will last all evening, the same amount of time perhaps, it's one story with a beginning, middle, and end. And this one, so in some ways, it adds on a bit to each opera, and a bit more effort, a bit more energy. And they're all 3 of them so different from one another. So it's a real gear shift for me, emotionally, and obviously the look of each character is so very different. It's been interesting even in the rehearsal process. You know, I'd walk in, I'd say, wait, am I a tramp or a nun? You know, what are we doing? Okay, you know, just to get your brain around sort of the atmosphere of the piece and of the character, and you know, and to keep everyone in their own house, as it were. You know, it's been an interesting challenge. And with Patrick, he has his finger on the pulse of how these pieces go, in my opinion. He really does. It's different for everyone, you know, for Patrick, because every opera has its own identity in such a very strong and clear way. So it's been intense. It's been great.
To star in all 3 of those operas in 3 very different soprano roles and 3 different acting challenges, and it takes an actress and singer of great versatility and stamina. They're each an hour long, and they're you know, they're particularly intense, Il Trittico and Suor Angelica, for her. And
there's such a difference musically in this sort of earthiness and the water, you know, the boat on the water feeling you get in the Tabarro. And it's almost like unfulfilled phrases on a regular basis. These are unfulfilled people. The situation, there's a brokenness in these people. And it's expressed in the most subtle and beautiful ways in the music.
Luigi is a tough little role, you know. I wish Puccini was alive now and we could have a little talk. But it's a heck of a role, and he just packs so much. Luigi's a real combustible character. He has this little aria, and Puccini's so great at this. He's able to take these characters that are working class people, people that you usually don't write operas about. Even nowadays, you don't see modern composers writing about garbage collectors or the tax man. Puccini had this ability to take these people and write such emotional, heartfelt pieces for them. And Luigi has this great aria where he is pretty much complaining about his life and about the hardships of it. And for me, I think it's one of the highlights of my character, my role.
The Suor Angelica, I think it's brilliant in a children's hospital. That's brilliant on so many levels. And there's something about it, all the blue and the sort of fluorescent lighting, there's something about it that's cool and mystical. And I think it's really very interesting. It's Puccini, and it's so sparse for so long, except for some of the lines for Suor Angelica as it gets more intense dramatically, and for the Principessa, it is extremely sparse. That's not typical Puccini, and it adds to the mystical quality of that piece. In the Gianni Schicchi, you hear a sort of chatter kind of vocal writing that, again, you don't hear usually. You know, you're not going to necessarily hear something like that in Butterfly, or Mano Lescaut, or you know, La Bohème, not quite like that. And so it's incredible. It could be, you know, it's incredible his range that he expressed and was able to realize in these 3 operas.
I found an interoffice memo from Latvi Mansouri in his first months as general director, asking me for a list of things out into the future for the then current Adler Fellows to do, where I thought their repertoire would go, etc. And I found the list that I wrote back, and on a different part of the memo, he asked me for a wish list of things that I would like to conduct in San Francisco. A very nice thing to ask, which you know, general directors will occasionally ask you if you're in favor. And at the top of both lists was the Trittico, was the Puccini Trittico. I said for Patricia Racette, who was very young at the time, I listed several roles, Mimi in La Bohème, Matilda in William Tell, various other things, Cio-Cio San and Butterfly, all of which she eventually did all over the world to great success. And I also put at the top of the list, I said, this is a soprano someday who could do all three roles in the Trittico, as very few sopranos will have ever done in history. And when David became the general director here, when David Gockley became the general director here, he sat down and asked me for a list of things, you know, that I'd like to do. Very nicely, he asked me that. And very near the top of the list, I said, I really, really want, at some point in my life, to do the Trittico, and I'd like to do it with Pat in all three parts.
This is my 20-year anniversary of stepping foot on the stage of the San Francisco Opera. I mean, I was in Maryland in 1988, which is 21 years ago, but when I began my Adler Fellowship, it was 20 years ago, and the first assignment I had was to do Alice Ford and the Family Performances on this stage. To be back here after 20 years and to be doing what when I first entered this profession, dreamed of doing, which was all three parts in Trittico, I mean, that's perfect. That's just perfect from my standpoint.